Judges chapter 16. One day Samson went to the Philistine town of Gaza and spent the night with a prostitute. Off top, this is starting crazy. And this is why this story is going to be crazy. You're starting it off with spending the night with a prostitute, so don't expect things to get better when you're doing these kind of things. Word soon spread that Samson was there, so the men of Gaza gathered together and waited all night at the town gates. They kept quiet during the night, saying to themselves, "When the light of morning comes, we will kill him." And really quickly, let's just say this. When you're really a child of God, don't be surprised when you see people ready to go to the extreme measures to harm you, because we obviously see that it happens biblically in the Bible. But Samson stayed in bed only until midnight. Then he got up, took hold of the doors of the town gates, including the two posts, and lifted them up, bar and all. He put them on his shoulders and carried them all the way to the top of the hill across the Hebron. And really quickly, Samson is a very strong character, so let's always keep that in consideration. This is a gift gifted to him by God. And what God can do for us regarding the gifts he gives us, we can't even put limits on, because again, the strength that he has is amazing. Sometime later, Samson fell in love with a woman named Delilah, who lived in the valley of Sorek. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, "Entice Samson to tell you what makes him so strong and how he can be overpowered and tied up securely. Then each of us give you 1,100 pieces of silver." So Delilah said to Samson, "Please tell me what makes you so strong and what it would take to tie you up securely." Samson replied, and that right there is where he messed up. Just, come on, brother. You're already about to expose your vulnerability. That makes no sense. "If I were tied up with 7 new bowstrings that have not yet been dried, I would become as weak as anyone else." So the Philistine rulers brought Delilah 7 new bowstrings, and she tied Samson up with them. She had hidden some men in one of their inner rooms of her house. Then she cried out, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." But Samson snapped the bowstrings as a piece of string snaps when it is burned by a fire. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. After, Delilah said to him, "You've been making fun of me and telling me lies. Now please tell me how you can be tied up securely." Samson replied, "If I were tied up with brand new ropes that had never been used, I would become as weak as anyone else." So Delilah took new ropes and tied him up with them. The men were hiding in the inner room as before. And again Delilah cried out, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." But again Samson snapped the ropes from his arms as if they were thread. Then Delilah said, "You've been making fun of me and telling me lies. Now tell me how you can be tied up securely." Samson replied, "If you were to weave the 7 braids of my hair into the fabric on your loom and tighten it with the loom shuttle, I would become as weak as anyone else." So while he slept, Delilah wove the 7 braids of his hair into the fabric. Then she tightened it with the loom shuttle. Again she cried out, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." But Samson woke up, pulled back the loom shuttle, and yanked his hair away from the loom and the fabric. The Delilah pouted, "How can you tell me I love you when you don't share your secrets with me?" And off top, make sure if you're dealing with someone, you're not dealing with someone who's a manipulator. Pay attention to the signs. And I'm not even sure how he didn't realize that after the first 3 times of telling her the coincidence that it kept happening, that she wasn't the op. But we'll keep going. "How can you tell me I love you when you don't share your secrets with me? You've made fun of me 3 times now, and you still haven't told me what makes you strong." She tormented him with her nagging day after day until he was sick of it. You do not. In the Bible, it talks about how bad it is to have a nagging wife. Again, this brother should have left. Brothers, if you are seeking marriage, pay attention to the signs. She tormented him with her nagging day after day until he was sick to death of it. Nagging is not going to be healthy. If you have a nagger and y'all aren't married, you need to pray on that. Finally, Samson shared his secret with her. So we also see that you can be broken down over time if you continue to allow someone to just nag at you, specifically your woman. So fellas, again, be very cautious when you're looking at who you want as a wife, because you can be broken down with just words. Words here can break you down. So he says, "My hair has never been cut," he confessed, "for I was dedicated to God as a Nazirite from birth. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as anyone else." Telling someone something that God gave to you as a gift, you have to be careful with that because not everybody wants to see you prosper. If God tells you to share your gift and verbalize it, then make sure it's from God. But don't just be just saying, oh, I got a gift, blah, blah. Because now people are going to wonder, well, how do we take the gift away? Because people can be haters. So Delilah realized he had finally told her the truth. So she sent for the Philistine rulers. Come back one more time, she said, for he has finally told me his secret. So the Philistine rulers returned with the money in their hands. Delilah lulled Samson to sleep with her head in her lap. And then she called in a man to shave off the 7 locks of his hair. In this way, she began to bring him down, and his strength left him. Then she cried out, Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you. When he woke up, he thought, I will do as before and shake myself free. But he didn't realize the Lord had left him. So a lot of times we notice that people in the world will say, God's with me, blah, blah. We clearly see that God can leave you. I'm not saying he will always, but it does show us that you do have that ability. So again, when God puts his hand on you, really make the use of his blessings and don't take it for granted. Don't brag about it. Don't just move however you want to move. When God gives you a gift, use it the right way. Because again, in this case, when you don't and you're out here being with women that you shouldn't be with, God left you. And you do not want to live your life with God not with you. So the Philistine captured him and gouged out his eyes, which is crazy. I know that hurt. They took him to Gaza, where he was bound with bronze chains and forced to grind grain in the prison. But before long, his hair began to grow back. So yes, it is true that God's gift, if it's taken away, can be given back. Not always, but in this case it was. But again, just be careful when you're out here doing certain sins, because a lot of times people say, God forgives me. Yes, he forgives you, but you still might have to live with the consequences of your actions. In this case, yeah, he got his gift back from God, but he don't have his eyes back. His eyes are gone. So that's that shows us that our bad decisions can lead to permanent results that we can never get fixed. Permanent repercussions. The Philistine rulers held a great festival, offering sacrifices and praising their God, Dagon. They said, our God has given us victory over our enemy Samson. When the people saw him, they praised their God, saying, our God has delivered our enemy to us. The one who killed so many of us is now our power. Half drunk by now, the people demanded, bring out Samson so he can amuse us. So he was brought up from the prison to amuse them, and they had him stand between the pillars supporting the roof. Samson said to the young servant who was leading him by the land, place my hands against the pillars that hold up the temple. I want to rest against them. Now the temple was completely filled with people. All the Philistine rulers were there, and there were about 3,000 men and women on the roof who were watching as Samson amused them. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, sovereign Lord, remember me again. O God, please strengthen me just one more time with one blow. Let me pay back the Philistines for the loss of my 2 eyes. And again, we do see that God can give us back our gifts even when we make mistakes. But we still have to live with the consequences of our actions, because guess what? He still has no eyes. Then Samson put his hands on the 2 center pillars that held up the temple. Pushing against them with both hands, he prayed, let me die with the Philistines. And the temple crashed down on the Philistine rulers and all the people. So he killed more people when he died than he had during his entire lifetime. Later, his brothers and other relatives went down to get his body. So you hear that, even though he got his gift back, he still had to die for his actions. Later, his brother and other relatives went down to get his body. They took him back home and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol, where his father Manoah was buried. Samson had judged Israel for 20 years. So obviously, there's quite a few important notes to say from this. One, we have to understand that when we sin, sometimes we do have to accept the consequences of our actions. It doesn't mean that you'll never be able to get God's hand placed on you again, because we see that his hand was placed back on Samson. But we do have to also acknowledge and recognize that he had permanent damage done to him, such as his eyes. So make sure you understand when you're going to sin that you can't control what repercussion could come from it. But if you do your best to not sin, then you might be able to avoid certain consequences. We also see that for a period, God had left Samson. And that's a scary feeling. For God to just leave you, that's not something I would want, at least. So I would also remember that he can leave. But then we do notice that when you pray and really submit to God, he can come back as well. And guess what? we also see sometimes that messing with the wrong people can get your gift taken away from you. So be careful who you're surrounding yourself with. Because guess what? You don't want something to be taken away from you because you surrounded yourself, or in this case, was intimate with the wrong person. So that's why we should always really understand and learn who we're getting intimate with. Because if not, we could mess around and have permanent, lifelong consequences. So those are some really big key points of the story of Samson and Delilah. There's many more points that you can make inside of this story, but as long as we always remember that, hey, our consequences, our actions can have consequences that are lasting, and God could leave us when we don't take advantage of our gift and really live our life for Him. If we remember those things, then we will just naturally live a more fruitful, blessed life. So thanks for watching this video and this workout, and I hope you all have a great day.